Hi, my name is Kirsten Tibballs and I'm a KitchenAid ambassador. Today I'm creating a carrot cake with layers of caramel frosting and dripping salted caramel. I'm using the KitchenAid stand mixer with the food processor attachment and the grater. I'm also going to bake the carrot cake in the KitchenAid Bake Assist microwave. I'm using the food processor attachment, which I love because it means that I don't have to invest in a standalone food processor. We simply connect it here on the KitchenAid hub. So we unscrew the badge and we click this in place. Then we place the screw back in to secure it. Firstly, we place in the disc adapter, press that in. Now I'm using the reversible shredding disc. You've got two options. We've got a small shredder and a large shredder. Now I'm using the small shredder, so I make sure that the raised side is placed facing up. So we're just going to place that in until it locks in. The lid is then secured back in place. We activate the shredder on the food processor by starting it here. We've got two options with the feed tube depending on the size of the product that you're actually grating. What I'm grating is really quite small, so I've just got a cavity here which I can push the carrots through. So place that on. You need to put a large bowl underneath because what we're shredding will come directly out from the base. I'm going to take the feed chute out. Now you've got two size options here. The carrots that I'm using actually fit directly in to the smaller option here. So I'm going to put that feed chute back in, place the carrot, and I'm going to start the mixer. Now I usually use it for shredding on speed 1 or 2. We just apply a small amount of pressure and push it down. You can go up to approximately speed 4. So continuing with the carrot cake, we're going to whip some sugar and eggs together. We've got the whisk attachment in the stand mixer. We're going to whip this up until it's light and creamy, and then we're going to drizzle in some oil. Now this is just a neutral vegetable oil. We add this in really slowly, like you would in mayonnaise, to ensure that we don't actually split the mixture. If we split the mixture, we lose all that air that we've just incorporated. We've incorporated all the oil. We're going to change from the whisk to the paddle attachment to continue to add the remaining ingredients. Now the oil is going to make this carrot cake beautiful and moist. I'm going to sieve all the dry ingredients before adding them in. So I've got some plain flour or all-purpose flour, some cornstarch. I have some bicarb soda, which is going to give us some lift in the cake. A little bit of baking powder, which is going to do similar to what the bicarb soda does. Now I've got 3 different spices here. I have ground ginger, ground nutmeg, and ground cinnamon. The salt I'm going to add in later, along with the pecan nuts. I'm using a sea salt. You can use a granulated salt as well. So I'm just going to add that into the mixture, obviously because it won't go through the sieve. So this is just on a sheet of baking paper, and I like to get a large sheet of baking paper so I can actually pick it up on 2 sides and then gradually add it into the mixture. Next I'm going to add in the shredded carrot. Lastly, in our carrot cake mixture, we're going to add in some roughly chopped pecan nuts. Now you can add walnuts if you want to. They go really well with carrot cake as well. I'm going to divide the carrot cake mixture evenly between the two tins. Now these are what we call sandwich tins. You can use a higher tin. Just make sure that you line it with some baking paper. So I've sprayed it with some vegetable oil, then lined it with the baking paper, ready for baking. We're ready for baking now. We're using the KitchenAid Bake Assist microwave. Now only on certain settings can you actually use metal tin. You can use it on convection, or you can use it on one of their pre-existing programs, which is exactly what we're doing today. To start, you're going to press baking menu, and then we're going to go to cake. We're going to rotate once again until we get to carrot cake. Once again, we select. When weight comes up, we're going to press select again. It's just confirming that you've got an oven-proof tin, which we do. And now it's preheating. Once the preheating process is finished, we're going to place the two cakes in at the same time, utilising the high rack, which is placed on the turntable. Preheating's finished. One cake in the base, one cake on top. Close the door and press start. So the time setting that they actually have pre-programmed into the Bake Assist microwave oven is exactly what we need. What I do suggest though is that halfway through at about the 35-minute mark, open the oven and swap the cakes over just to ensure an even bake. We're now ready to remove them from the oven. Just tap on the top lightly. It should bounce back when it's ready. Now I've left the cakes here on the cooling rack for approximately 5 minutes. What I'm now going to do is put the cake rack on top and flip them over to ensure that I have a nice flat surface on the carrot cake. I'm going to leave them there to cool completely. Next step in the recipe is a caramel sauce. Now this caramel sauce is used as a garnish, which tastes delicious. It's also used as an ingredient in our caramel frosting, so it must be made first. I'm going to place cream into a saucepan, and we're going to bring that to a boil and set it to the side. That's come to a boil, so I'm going to remove it from the stove. The reason we boil the cream first is so it's closer to the temperature of the caramelized sugar. If you add the cream when it's cold into the caramelized sugar, it can give you big chunks of toffee that you then need to dissolve. Next is the caramelizing of the sugar. Now make sure that your pot is completely clean, because if you have any impurities or anything on the saucepan, it can cause the sugar to crystallize. You can use standard sugar or you can use caster sugar. Either one is fine. I'm going to place that into the saucepan. Now that we've got the sugar on the stove, I'm going to turn it on about a medium heat, and I'm going to gently stir it as the sugar melts to ensure it melts evenly. It's important that you don't agitate it too much or stir it too much, because it can cause the sugar, once you've melted it, to recrystallize. Now that it's all dissolved, I'm going to add in the cream. Turn the stove off. Make sure that you've got a large enough pot when you add the cream in, so it's not going to overflow, because it does boil up quite a bit when you add the liquid cream in, and it also creates a lot of steam, so be careful not to burn yourself. We're now going to add in some unsalted butter, which I've cubed, which makes it really easy to mix in. If you're impatient like me, you'll take this straight from the fridge so it's nice and cool, and it cools your caramel down a little bit faster. Just add it in a few pieces at a time. Just going to add in some salt. Once again, I'm using sea salt, but you can also use a granulated salt. We're going to pour it into a bowl. Look at that caramel, it is so delicious. We're going to cover the surface with cling wrap to ensure that we don't get a skin and we don't evaporate any moisture. We must ensure that we push that down onto the surface of the caramel. I'm I'm going to let this cool at room temperature. I'm going to weigh out 150 grams, which we're going to use as part of our frosting recipe. The remaining caramel we're going to retain at room temperature, and we're going to use it once we start assembling our carrot cake. Now the caramel cream cheese frosting, this is absolutely delicious, and I won't judge if you eat it just on its own. I'm going to combine the butter. Once again, we're using unsalted butter. With most applications of baking and pastry, we tend to use unsalted butter, then add salt if required. We're going to add some cream cheese. Carrot cake isn't carrot cake without a bit of cream cheese in the frosting. I'm going to mix these two ingredients together until smooth. Mix the butter and cream cheese together until smooth. Now, little tip, it is much easier to combine those two ingredients if they're at room temperature before you start mixing. We're now going to add in some sieved icing sugar and some brown sugar. The brown sugar in this is fantastic because the molasses helps to contribute to that caramel flavour. I'm going to mix this on a low speed. While that's mixing, I'm adding in vanilla paste. You can also use vanilla bean if you want to. Lastly, we're going to add in our cooled salted caramel. Now the mixture can sometimes separate if your butter's a little bit cold. All it needs is a little bit of heat, and you can create that heat by putting it on top speed and mixing it until it warms up a little bit. Our frosting is ready and absolutely delicious. We're ready now to assemble our carrot cake. This is the exciting part. This is the part where we get to assemble the carrot cake. So I'm going to put the cake back the right way up. Center it on your plate. The frosting can be made in advance if you want to, stored in the fridge, and then you'll need to really beat it up again before using it. We're going to put frosting on the middle layer. Be quite generous with how much you put on. And just spread that out. I like a little bit to go just over the side. If this gets too soft at any stage, you can just place a plate with the cake on it back into the fridge for the frosting to firm up before continuing. We're going to drizzle some caramel on this layer. So we get a few drips over the side. Just going to swirl that through a little bit in the centre. Going to put the next layer of carrot cake on. Once again, turn it over. So we've got the top facing upwards, and just level it out as needed. We're going to continue with more frosting on top. I love it to have a little bit of an ooze of the caramel and frosting. I think it makes it look a little bit more decadent. So the caramel will spread and level itself out to a nice flat level. Just going to give it a little bit of help, pushing it over to the edge. Now I'm going to finish with some pecan nuts, which we're just going to break up. Now these pecan nuts have been roasted at 160 degrees for 15 minutes. I'm going to finish with a dust of icing sugar. An absolutely beautiful carrot cake made easy with KitchenAid appliances.